Right everyone, we are now less than 3 days away from the big kick-off for Celtic at least on Sunday. We're back with Scott McDonald, and today for the first time we're joined by Dave. So hello Dave, welcome to the channel. How are you getting on?
How are you doing, Hamish? It's great to have the chance to talk to yourself, and obviously Scott, who scored some of the biggest goals in my formative years watching Celtic. So it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
He's getting in early doors, sucking up to you, Scott. Terrible.
Make me feel old.
and that too, yeah. That was the intention.
What was your favourite Scott McDonald goal, Dave?
I mean, it's got to be Ibrox. The Man United one was pretty good, but I think even in a season when we don't win the league, I think if you score a win at Ibrox, that it's hard to top that, I think.
Scott, what was your favourite Scott McDonald goal?
Blushing already. Stop it. There was so many, Hamish. I think the two that were mentioned there are right up there, though. They're like my favourite two goals probably I scored for Celtic. So good choices, Dave. Good choices. Welcome.
Okay. In terms of the new season, guys, how are we feeling? I thought in this video we could look ahead to Sunday and also just talk generally about the new campaign. Before that, though, a few bits of news that have maybe come up. There's only one bit, really. Osaze Urhoghide has gone back out on loan to Belgium with KV Ostend until the end of the season. They've also got an option to buy on him. He was out on loan with them last season as well. Scott, clearly just not in Ange's plans. Is it just kind of evidence of how good Juranovic and Ralston are?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's just no way in there. At the right back area, particularly Juranovic and Ralston have got it sewn up. Ralston's showing, particularly early on in the piece last season, that he's a worthy candidate to push Juranovic and will do again this season. And if he's called upon, he's a great deputy.
Yeah, Dave, Urhoghide, is that his time up at the club?
I think we've seen with O'Reilly that these players can crop up from lower leagues in England, but I think it's about being, I guess, surgical rather than just picking players up just because they're available, as it kind of was the case with Shaw and Urhoghide. So I think if you could get any sort of fee for either of the two, you probably take it.
What do we think about Liam Shaw? Because he's been nowhere in pre-season. I think he's maybe been on the bench for one game. I kind of had him a bit ahead of Urhoghide obviously they play different positions, but in the pecking order. But he's another one, Scott, that it just seems isn't going to make it, really.
I think we always said that, like from where it come from, that it was always going to be like a big ask, to break through. You think you found him, it was quite promising early on. I think I remember you obviously, pumping him up a little bit and thinking he was going to play his part last year. Am I correct in saying that, Hamish? I'm not saying
I don't recall that personally, but if you say so.
All right, okay. But look, I think, there's been many of these types of players that have come through the doors at Celtic where, particularly the younger ones, the expectation and not quite lived up to it, or not just even had the game time at first team level. So, look, it's you're not going to always get the younger ones correct, but you're hoping you can get that, diamond in the rough. But look, they need to move on with their careers. They need to play football. They need to be men. So they need to get out there and play, whether that's on loan or Celtic actually, get a fee for them.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll wait and see what happens with Shaw. Moving on to the players who are here. New season starts Sunday is Celtic's first game at home to Aberdeen. Dave, how are we feeling about our title defence? Tell me how you're feeling right now about Celtic.
So obviously we've had I think it's fair to say, a pretty positive pre-season. I guess it's sort of a double-edged sword when it comes to good pre-seasons at Celtic, because the obvious kind of rebuttal to winning all your games is, well, look at what happened in the Mowbray season. Because we're a superstitious bunch, I think, as you two discussed last week. But no, I think it's been a good preparation. I think in terms of looking at what the two clubs, being us and Rangers, have done over the transfer window, it's going to be close. I think they've recruited pretty significantly. How much of that is improving the starting 11 probably remains to be seen. But I think theirs is a bit more speculative than our recruitment's been. I think ours has been about dragging our ceiling up, dragging our floor up. rather than pushing the kind of ceiling of the starting 11 up. So obviously I back us to go and defend the title, but I think there's going to be some pretty fraught nerves along the way.
Do you think it's going to be close, Scott?
I do. Yeah, I do. Look, I think the back end of last season tells us that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst had some decent moments with Rangers, albeit the first game, the first derby that he played in was dominant Celtic, but after that he managed to get the grips with in terms of Celtic's tactics and shape, and you could say probably outwitted Ange a little bit, near the end of it, but just not enough. Celtic did more than enough and were still excellent all the way through, to remain unbeaten all the way to the back end of the season. I think it's going to take that again. The consistency is going to be key from one of the other teams. And again, those pressurized moments within the season, there's always going to be points dropped. It's just how you can react and respond to that. But I think Celtic are in a great position right now. I think it's been quite odd for everyone this year because this is the first time that coming into a season that there's been no Champions League qualifiers to talk about or actual proper competitive games. So, and let's be honest, without the competitive games, there hasn't been anything spectacular in terms of friendlies to talk about as well from a Celtic perspective. It's been very low key from a Celtic pre-season perspective, from all the big games that even when I was at the club that you would go and play, whether it was in America or you play in the tournaments down in London. It's just been very, very low key from them. So the real stuff starts now, and we're gonna see very, very quickly. But Celtic are in a great position, and like we talked about last week, Hamish, that everyone's fit. So that's a massive, massive boost, and big problems for Ange in terms of team selection, particularly up top. Because he's got some really good headaches to be had.
Because we didn't really have that at any stage last season, a full squad full of fit players. There was always, injuries of some sort, and I dare say we'll have some in the opening weeks of the season. Ideguchi's obviously the only one really missing at the moment. I think I was probably quite obsessed with Rangers maybe last season, maybe the year before, looking at everything they did and, they've signed this player, that's not good news for us. I've barely looked at their signings. I couldn't tell you all their signings this summer because I feel so secure with Celtic. I just think it's all about us this season. Yes, they're a good team. I agree with both of you. I think it's going to be relatively close. But I just have so much faith that Celtic are going to be too strong because I think we're going in the right direction. We're going to be better than last season. We're not going to have those 11 points thrown away in the first 7 matches that we had last season. We're going to have a great opportunity, I think, without these qualifiers to maybe win our first 5-6 matches, including the derby, and have a great, be in a great position. And I just look at pre-season, and virtually every game we've played, I've been impressed with us in general, the way we've come out of the blocks, the football we've played. Yes, in the second half, after the subs have been made, we've kind of faltered a little bit, but you're not going to get that on Sunday. It's going to be Celtic at their best, and I just think we're going to hit the ground running. And yeah, I'm not worried about Rangers. I know this is going to get clipped up at the end of the season.
I'm glad it's on my first podcast. I'm glad it's you and not me.
well, what do you want to say, Dave? Come on, are you worried about Rangers, or do you feel like me? Are you totally, just sure of where Celtic are heading?
I think we're certainly in a good place and heading in a good direction. I guess it's kind of an odd one because there was so much resignation this time last year. Even if you were confident about the manager long term, I don't think any of us expected it to go quite as well as it did, especially after that start. I would say quietly confident about the season. I don't know if I'll be making as many bold statements as you, not quite yet.
Scott, quietly confident, does that sum it up for you?
I'm quietly confident. The thing that worries me is the intensity levels that Ange wants and craves from his teams. And I've seen a dip in form in terms of, I know Celtic are a different animal compared to Yokohama, and it's a different type of a league in terms of much more competitive across the board within that league itself. But there was a major drop-off in Yokohama the second season after we won the league. And it's just been able to maintain those high-intensity levels, albeit squads are a lot bigger this year. But Champions League games coming as well. A lot of it's going to boil down to the mentality of the players. And if they can keep that high standards that Ange requires from them, and keep the performances with it, and that will all be based on results, particularly early on. Hamish, like you're saying, like they can get off to a flyer, then I think we'll see the best of Celtic.
Yeah, because we did have Brendan Rodgers, the Invincible season, and then the second season, there seemed to be a real drop-off in the standards. Is that the kind of thing you're alluding to?
Well, I think anything's a drop-off after an invincible season, isn't
True.
it? No matter what. It's a difficult comparison, but again, the expectation levels are a lot higher this year as well. Like they've just touched on there from last season, there wasn't really any expectation. It was no one knew what they were gonna get last year, and there was a lot of negativity around a little bit around the appointment and lack of signings. There's a lot more pressure on the players this year. It's how they cope with that as well, in terms of the expectation levels and how the fans are going to cope with that as well, particularly if it's not going well in certain games. We see that sometimes, with the support. There's an expectation, and if it's not being met, then the groans start. And then how does that affect the team? Because it does. I mean, we talked about this last year with things, and it's important that everyone's patient as well. It's going to be, at the beginning of every season, everyone's still trying to find their feet. It's all right being really good in preseason friendlies, and we talked about that last week again, that you can't really read into them too much. The real stuff starts now, and no matter if it's an amazing performance or just a drab 1-0, it's a start for Celtic. As long as they get 3 points and they can progress and move forward.
You had a very drab 1-0, I think, in your only flag day. St Mirren, was it? Barry Robson penalty. Any memories of that at all?
No, actually, no, none at all. I think the one previous to that, the one where I signed for Celtic, I remember that because I was suspended, and that was a 0-0 against Kilmarnock at home, first day of the season. So that was a drab one too, mate. So I hope I'm not putting a spin on it that there's going to be like that. Certainly, come the weekend. Fingers crossed.
You played 75 minutes of the St Mirren game, replaced by Georgios Samaras with 15 to go. So not a bad sub coming on for you there.
Yeah, I can't remember. Gorgeous George coming on, that was good, but I really can't remember that game. No.
It was a really dodgy penalty as well. Like it snuck in.
Brilliant.
I remember it well.
Did you win it, Scott?
I have no idea, mate. I couldn't tell you. I can't remember. I know I didn't score the penalty, that's for sure.
No.
So
someone find out and tell us, did Scott McDonald win the penalty, the dodgy penalty against St Mirren? Everyone will probably be saying there's more than 2 teams in the league. There's 12 teams. Is there another team in there, you think, guys, starting with you, Scott, that could surprise this season?
I don't think it's much as a surprise, but I think Robbie Nielsen and Hearts are always going to be there or thereabouts. They were last year, and look, I think they've recruited pretty well again this year. For me, they're the ones that are going to be closest to Celtic and Rangers once again. The rebuilding season for Hibs under Lee Johnson, not been a great start, obviously, with him being knocked out the League Cup already. Aberdeen, I'm waiting to see what's going to really, really happen there with Jim Goodwin this year. Not a great start for him last year. A lot of change. It remains to be seen. Is it going to be another Stephen Glass situation? And realistically, yeah, I think pretty much you talk about them ones. Dundee United, could they be a surprise?
Signed some good players.
Yeah, they have. They certainly have, and could be a good season for them. But I think Hearts are always going to be the ones that are going to be closest for me.
Did they sign an Australia international, Dundee United, the other day? Fullback?
Yeah, the left back. Yeah. As in, when you said, have they signed an Australian, I'm going, which club? Because I think everyone signed an Australian this year. They're infiltrating Scotland.
Yeah, our good friend of the channel, Ryan McGowan, signing for St Johnstone as well. So they're literally, I think, at pretty much every club, probably 7 or 8 clubs in the top flight.
Dundee United signed the goalkeeper as well, Birighetti. So yeah, there's so many there, and a couple at St Mirren now. So it's going to be good fun when I come back anyway, seeing all these Aussies.
Dave, who's your team to watch outside of us and the other lot?
Yeah, I think it's probably hard to look past Hearts, as Scott said. I think, as we're going to talk about them, I don't think Aberdeen will be anywhere near as bad as they were last season. I mean, I think their position in the table was maybe a little bit unrepresentative of how of how they played. I know friend of the show, Stephen Russell, does his expected points, which looks at the underlying numbers to determine where teams will finish, and he had them comfortably top half, which, I mean, that won't be much comfort when you finish 10th, but I would certainly expect them to challenge for Europe, at worst this year. But in terms of challenging the top two, no, I don't see it at all.
Expected points, Scott. David never brought that to the party, did he?
No, he didn't. Certainly not. No. Don't ask me.
Already a step up.
Please.
In terms of Sunday, guys, Aberdeen at Celtic Park, they've spent close to £1 million, Aberdeen, this summer, which is unheard of. I know they've brought in about, I think, 7 or 8 million from the sale of Ramsey to Liverpool and Ferguson to Bologna, but they've signed some interesting players as well. This seems to me like a pretty good match for us to have to kick off the season, Scott, in terms of, a big club coming to town on the telly. Yes, it's a Sunday afternoon, 4:30. It's not an ideal kick-off, but it'll be a full house, and it should be a great opportunity for the team to start well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's always a danger as well, because when clubs come to Celtic Park this early, there's no fear realistically for them, because there's an expectation that they're not going to get anything from the game. So we might as well come and have a go at least, which again could work in Celtic's favour. You'd like to think, in terms of teams coming out a little bit more rather than be, too protective. But on the other hand, though, if you're Jim Goodwin as well, you don't want to get a spanking either. That doesn't set your season off very, very well. So look, it's a difficult one. I think they will go with caution, but they will probably open up a little bit more than you would probably normally see if it was mid-season, I think. But Aberdeen historically give us, a real tough game, at Celtic Park, and obviously away to Pittodrie. So I think it's not going to be easy sailing for me.
Because even last season, Dave, in those matches when they were struggling, they were all like tight matches. We could have not won any of them, and we ended up winning all three.
Yeah, particularly that first game at Pittodrie, that was a really, really big moment off the back of the three away defeats, and then the draw at home to Dundee United. You were maybe looking at not a great situation for the manager, certainly in terms of the outside pressure, had that not gone away. So that was I think 3 really, really big wins that we got, and as you said, very tight. Like you said too, there's been some pretty interesting recruitment. I think they've casted the net a wee bit wider than most clubs in their position do, which I think you can kind of appreciate from the outside. It sounds like our old mate Scalesy's been a bit of a hit, which is nice for him. He obviously won't play on Sunday, and it sounds like we'll have to move McCrory in, which is obviously a benefit to us. I wouldn't put too much stock into their League Cup campaign so far, just based on the quality of opposition, although there is something to be said for momentum, but I do think we'll probably be okay on Sunday.
In terms of the team, guys, I'm going to save mine till maybe Saturday's preview, but I'll let you two kind of work out your team between the two of you. The team for Norwich was Hart, Juranovic, Carter-Vickers, Welsh, Taylor, McGregor, O'Reilly, Hatate, Jota, Kyogo, Maeda. Is there any changes you would make from that Norwich team for the game on Sunday?
I think generally, usually what you see the week before is what you'll see in the first game of the season, unless there's someone who's got a slight knock that didn't play in that game. But however, I don't see that being the case. I think that will be the team, Hamish, for this week coming, personally.
Dave,
any arguments? Bernabe, Turnbull?
I think, like Scott said, that's a dress rehearsal team. And I don't think you can argue with that at all. I think minus Starfelt, that's our best 11, so that's the one we'll see on Sunday for me.
I think David Turnbull's obviously really pushing that. We've talked about Aaron Moy a lot last week coming in. O'Reilly's had a really good pre-season as well. Obviously, he plays, but Turnbull's going to give him problems in terms of, he's a massive goal threat, isn't he? But it's great to have him in terms of to come off the bench. But there's so many good options in that midfield area. It's going to be tough at times this year to pick who's the best 3.
So see players like Turnbull, Ralston, Giacomakis, players who are really good players, have offered something for us but aren't in maybe the starting 11 at the moment. Do you see them having to bide their time a little bit this season in the early part when we're not playing 2 games a week? We're only playing 1 game, I think, for the first 6-7 weeks of the season. Do you think we'll kind of see this starting 11 kept pretty constant throughout that period, Scott?
No, I don't. I think just because the amount of games that are going to come as well, uh, and Ange likes to tweak it a little bit here or there with one or two. So I think he'll do that. Uh, Um, I think the good thing is I think there seems to be a lot of continuity within the squad as well, though, and there will be players that aren't happy, but in a good way, not happy, and they'll keep pushing. I think it's really healthy at the moment, the squad itself and the level of competition within it, and to have those types of players on your bench, it's very, very encouraging this early on for Celtic. I'm excited by that. When you say those players that are to come into the team at certain times if you need them, one to start or to have impact in games as well.
Yeah. We'll move on to the interesting bit of the show, everyone, the bit that Scott moaned about just before we started recording because I'd not given him enough notice to think. Hopefully you've had enough notice now. Just a 3 predictions I'm going to ask for that will more than definitely come back to at the end of the season, so bear that in mind. Start with you, Dave. Who is going to be the star for Celtic this season?
I think he was clearly the star of pre-season, and for me, it's going to be Hatate. I think Hatate will be player of the season, or certainly be in there or thereabouts. I think we saw glimpses of what he's capable of last season. Obviously, I think fatigue set in a wee bit towards the end of the season. He played so much football over the last couple of years, but he's the one for me. It'll be. I'd be very surprised if Hatate didn't have a really, really good season.
I think he's the one a lot of people have probably gone for. He'd probably be near the top of my list. O'Reilly would probably be in there as well. I just think, for me, Kyogo's going to be the star. That's the guy I would go for. I just think last season, for as good as he was, we only saw him for 6 months. I think this season, fingers crossed he stays injury-free. I think that guy will score 25 goals this season if he stays injury-free. There's another major... There's a bonus prediction, everyone. Scott, who's your star of the season?
You mentioned him there. I think O'Reilly for me. I really like him. I love watching him play. If he keeps performing the way he is, there's going to be those links. But I'm really excited in terms of what he's going to do this year, and I think he will be the standout. And I think he'll fill that Rogic role really, really well.
Okay. Surprise package of the season. Dave, again, we'll start with you.
I think because of the business we've done, particularly those we've moved out, you're maybe a little bit short on players to choose from in terms of ones that we don't have too many expectations for. Because I think in terms of the squad we've got, we like this squad. I think most of the players, we have some kind of expectation that they'll contribute. So although it's obviously not great timing with his injury, I'm going to say Debutant. I think from what we've seen in pre-season, it looks like there's a player in there. And assuming we don't send another midfielder, I think there's certainly room for him to get minutes. So not much selection for that pick, but he'd be mine.
Okay, Scott.
I'm gonna stick with Aaron Moy because there's been a lot of negativity already in the last week from what I've read about certain things from supporters. You've got to remember he's not played much football since January, February. He filled in the gap for us with the national team, particularly without playing any football, and done exceptionally well. It'll take him time to get up to speed. So I think he's going to surprise a few people once he gets up to speed, how good he really is. And in terms of being a free transfer, how good a signing it's going to be for Celtic in the long term.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going for another new signing. Bernabei, I think, has probably kind of gone under the radar a bit so far. He's a big signing, a big signing that we paid a fair amount of money for from Argentina. And I commented on this after the game on Saturday. I think you see bits of him and immediately you see why Ange just signed him, because he's very good at progressing the ball, very comfortable, with the ball at his feet. His issue at the moment is his passing, and passes seem to go astray. I think when he gets up to speed with the way Ange wants to play football, with the movement his teammates are making, because we always hear from Ange's teams that it's not really about the person that's in possession, it's about all the players around him and the movement they're producing. I think Bernabei could really, become a top left back for us and really take the team forward as well. I think it's a crucial position. Greg Taylor's done well. I think he's definitely the best option at the moment in the position, but I think Bernabei has a higher ceiling. and I think he might surprise people a little bit, because I feel like already people are kind of having doubts about him, and I think he'll do well. The other one would be Jens, the centre back. I thought he looked, albeit in very short glimpses on Saturday, I thought he looked comfortable in possession. I thought he looked like a big kind of physical presence. I think he could be good as well. One big prediction you're going to make for the season. Now, you have free rein to do what you want here. I'll kick you off if you really want. I think that we will beat I'm already regretting saying this, guys. I think we'll beat a big European team this season. I know that's very vague, and I'm not saying we're going to make the Champions League last 16 at all. In fact, I don't think we will. But I think we'll take a big scalp in Europe. It may even come in the Europa League, who knows? But that's my big prediction. As vague as you can get, guys. Dave?
Hamish, mate, we're going to win the Champions League. No, I dithered on what to go for. I thought about Europe after Christmas, and then based on the group you could get, that's maybe about tenuous. So I went with, I think we'll win at least 2 trophies. Which 2, I won't say, but I think we'll win at least 2.
Which 2?
I'm not going to say.
Fair enough. Scott?
I'd agree with the 2 trophies. I'm going to go all out there, and I'm going to say finally Celtic fans will love this one. We're going to get Real Madrid in the Champions League group stage.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Correct. And that's the one that everyone's always wanted, I think, because we always seem to get Barcelona, the AC Milans. I think it's about time we got Real Madrid.
I like that one. But that's just down to the draw, though. So if that doesn't happen, you can just say, "Oh, that was just luck." So you're a cop out, basically.
All right, okay, not good enough. You want me to say another one then?
It's fine. If that's what you're going for, that's fine. We'll go with it. But
I think everyone listening to this show will actually agree with me. They'd be buzzing with that.
Oh, me too. It'd be amazing. It's the one team I think everyone wants. I think, did someone comment on it? Was it Callum McGregor or someone like that?
He did.
Said that,
That's who he said he wanted.
Okay. Which shows that the players clearly feel like that as well. Right, guys, thanks for your predictions. Those will be clipped up, sat in a folder for the next 10 months, and we'll revisit them in May or earlier with Scott's one. We'll be back tomorrow night. We're doing a live show, me, John, and a guest. A bit of a season preview. We'll chat a bit more about all of the teams. We'll talk transfers as well. So thanks very much, guys, for joining us. Thanks for watching, and we'll speak to you tomorrow night.